Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. Today I've got the Thermal Master P3 thermal camera to show you. So this is a review sample that was sent in to me by Thermal Master, so thank you very much for the review sample. This one caught my eye because it's got some interesting new features over the current thermal camera that I use, which is the Infrared P2 Pro. I get offers on various thermal cameras, and a lot of them are kind of just much of the same thing, so I don't usually bother going through all of them. However, this one, as I say, it had some interesting features to me. So the first bit that sprung out is that rather than having a clip-on macro lens, which a lot of the thermal cameras have, this one has a focusing ring on it. So rather than clipping the macro lens on, you've got a focus ring that can focus from apparently 80 meter, so functionally infinite focus, all the way down to 8mm for really close-up macro shots. And those close-up macro shots are the place that people like me are interested in, because I want to look at tiny little SMD parts on a circuit board. So yeah, and again, having that adjustable focus is good, because I have noticed on my P2 Pro that sometimes the macro you've got to get really, really close, and without the macro you've got to be really far away. So for this, you've got infinite variability between those two lenses. Then the other headline feature of this thing is the 512 by 384 Super IR resolution. Now, for comparison, most of the mainline sort of affordable infrared cameras like the P2 Pro that I use are 256 by 192. So this obviously claiming to be double that made me raise my eyebrows. And I did say to them straight up, is that your actual sensor resolution, or are you scaling it? And they said, no, that's scaled. And I'm like, cool, I appreciate your honesty. It is the same sensor resolution as most of the other mainstream cameras. However, if they're using some kind of upscaling on that, is that actually worth anything? Does that actually get you a better picture than just a straight 256 by 192 picture would otherwise give you? We're going to find out. So let's quickly open this thing up. So in the box, we've got some more boxes. So this big box has a huge quick start guide in it, which I'm not going to read. And then this little box had this extra cable in. So this is effectively an extension cable, which is kind of neat. So you can use this to connect this up to a PC or some other device. So it's got a socket that the camera plugs into, and then it gives you a cable that you can plug into something. So that's handy if you're plugging into a computer, or if you just want it to be free, to be handheld. So that's a nice inclusion in there. And then in here we've got this nice little carry case for it. So we open that guy up, and here is our thermal camera, which, as you can see, just plugs directly into the bottom of your smartphone. And then also it came with a Type-C to Lightning adapter. Oh my god, please come out. There we go. Type-C to Lightning adapter. So if you have got if you're using an older iPhone, then yeah, you can plug that in as well. It's going to be a bit dorky sticking out the bottom, but hey, it's nice that they included that. I kind of appreciate that they actually bothered to put all of the accessories in. Most of these will often have two SKUs. There'll be a Type-C version and a Lightning version. Just the Type-C version for this. Use an adapter if you've got an older iPhone. So, the actual camera itself looks much like all the rest of them. It's a little bit more chunky than the infrared, but it doesn't really matter. It plugs into the bottom of your phone. The most iconic feature is obviously this big sensor ring here, or this big focus ring, which has 2 full turns on it. So yeah, that's the device. Okay, right. Let's plug it into my phone, and we'll have a quick look at it. I've just put my soldering iron on the desk at 100 degrees, so that's given us a heat source to look at. So by default, I really like the Temp Master app. It's really clear and easy to understand. So at the top of the screen here, we've got a calibrate button. So at any time, we can just say recalibrate to what you're looking at. Then we've got a range thing. So by default, it gives me -20 to 150. It's also got 100C to 600C. So we've got high temperature stuff. So if I switch into that range. So now in the 100C to 600C, we're much more sensitive in the upper temperatures rather than the lower temperatures. Let's just drop back into the lower areas. This X3 button seems to be some kind of image enhancement, which does remove some of the sort of fringing around the edges where it's upscaling the picture. However, in some examples, which I'll show you in a minute, I found that it did add a huge amount of noise to the image. So you may find it helpful or unhelpful depending on the situation, but you can turn it on and off just at the tap of a finger, so that's nice. Then down here we've got general settings, so you can rotate, mirror, adjust the scale, and so on. Then we do have a picture-in-picture mode where you can switch on your phone's main camera to get a combination shot. This is completely worthless in macro situations because the lenses are 6 inches apart. If you were looking at like an electrical panel on a wall a meter or two away, that might be useful. Because at that kind of range you'll get at some kind of picture convergence. But for macro stuff, picture-in-picture is completely worthless, so I don't care. We've got the photo button where you can take pictures or record video. We've got palette, so you can switch to the color palette of your preference. So we can put it on black hot there. And so this is obviously useful for color blindness and other such things. You can use whatever is useful. The red hot is also nice because obviously actual hot bits will appear at very high contrast there. Good for finding hot spots. And then we've also got these utilities here where you can place another point on the screen, rectangles, circles, etc., etc. However, by default, it gives us a crosshair in the middle of what I'm looking at, and it also has 2 floating points of hotspot and cold spot, which is really handy because if I move just slightly off counter, you can see that the hotspot is immediately seeking the hottest part on the screen. It's hard to see here, but you can just see that dancing about there. So if something appears for a moment, you might just see that hotspot jump over to a hot area if it pulses. So that's very handy. So yeah, overall, the core features on the app are immediately useful. We do have a zoom, but it's a very dirty digital zoom, which is basically worthless in my opinion, but whatever. If you find that useful, then cool, I guess. So yeah. Let's see if we can get a really big close-up on this. So I'm going to get real close. And yeah, you can see we can get right up on that. And then at a medium range, I can pull back, adjust the focus ring, and focus in on that again. So no need to clip on the macro lens, and I can get to whatever distance is comfortable for me. Very handy. Here's some shots of my 3D printer running. That obviously gives you a nice view of something that is generating a lot of heat. You can see here all of that fringing around the edge of the print bed. That was the X3 image enhancement doing that. As soon as I turned off the enhancement, all of that jittering went away. So this is a really good example of where the image enhancement can be bad. So there are some instances where it's going to clean up the picture that you're looking at and smooth things out, and there are other instances where it's just going to induce noise. However, as I say, because that's a one-button press on the home screen of the app, it's really easy to turn that on and off depending on whether it's actually helping you or not. So I'm perfectly happy with that being there and just doing its thing. So let's try this thing out for my use case for it, which is finding faults on motherboards. So here's a laptop motherboard that I have sabotaged earlier on. So I've put a dead capacitor on this board in order to induce a nice big main rail short. So if I just do a very quick check on the main rail of this guy here, I'm going to go up to the CPU MOSFETs and just check on the input side. And as you can see, we've got 0.1 ohms on the main rail of this motherboard. If you want more details on main rail shorts, which are sort of the most common repair that I do around here, check out video number 467, which is a recent one I did where I go into a lot of detail about this kind of fault and how to measure it. In the meantime, I've got a main rail short on here, and we've got to find whatever dead capacitor it is that's stopping this board from working. So I'm going to set up my power supply, and we'll use the Thermal Master P3 to locate our dead capacitor. Right, I've connected a ground probe up to just the shield of a USB port there. And my power supply is set up at 1 volt and 3 amps. And so now when I touch my positive probe onto the main rail, whatever is shorted on the board is going to light up. So let's come in with this guy. And I'll start, I'm going to just set a rough, let's focus in about there-ish. And I'll just start recording so I can give you guys a nice view of what's going on. Just focus on the board as a whole. All right, here we go. So let's just touch the main rail. Okay, and as you can see, straight away we've got a flare up on the board, and the automatic hotspot there has just immediately jumped over to our hotspot. So if it wasn't apparently obvious, it's over there. The stuff we've got going on here is reflections, so we can ignore those, but by panning around the board we can very quickly find it again. There's our little bonfire right there. So let's come in for the close-up on that. So I've just got to take my hand off so I can come in and focus. Other way. And there we go. There's our little sabotage capacitor on the board. That's on the main rail where it connects up to the backlight connector. Here's that area under the microscope, and if I just try and use some alcohol to detect that, I'll just drip a little bit of alcohol there, and we'll do the same test and just see if the alcohol dries up. And as you can see, at only about 30 degrees C, it is not obvious. So this is where thermal cameras can be so enormously powerful, because the lesser methods of using alcohol or the touch test, like, that's not hot under my finger. As it dries up there, we can start getting a hint, but you're going to need to know roughly where it is before that becomes helpful. So how's the actual image quality? Well, here's the Thermal Master compared to my infrared, and as you can see, it's not worlds apart. We're still looking at a 256 by 192 image. Both these cameras have the same sensor resolution, and the Thermal Master can't create detail out of thin air, no matter what kind of upscaling it uses. I could argue that the Thermal Master is a bit cleaner, but honestly I think it's a wash. For my use case, I don't think the claimed super resolution makes a meaningful difference. For this product category, sensor resolution is still king, and the two products are even in this comparison. But what this comparison doesn't show is that I had to hold the infrared at exactly the right distance to get a really clear macro shot, whereas with the Thermal Master, I can hold it at whatever distance felt right and just refocus. That's the real headline feature here, and it really does set it apart from fixed lens cameras. I also feel like the Thermal Master app itself has a cleaner layout where it's easier to find the basic controls. Infrared's app has more features, but they're more aimed toward data logging and other similar lab tasks, which I don't really think need to be in a cell phone app. So in terms of price and value, the Thermal Master P3 comes in at £280 list price, and you may be able to find it a bit cheaper than that if you go directly to places like AliExpress, but you can find it at that price on Amazon UK, so that gives you a rough idea on what to expect. And that's a very comparable price to its competitive products, like the P2 Pro. However, I believe this is giving a better picture than the P2 Pro does. And the variable focal lens, I think, is a lot more versatile and gives you the distance that you want rather than the distance that you have to go to in order to get a clear picture. I think between £200 and £300 is a fair price for thermal cameras of this category, and if you're doing the kind of repair work that I display on this channel, then I think one of these is a cracking buy for your toolkit, because it will just make short circuits an instant find instead of messing around with alcohol, Rosen flux, or any of the other sort of shed methods of doing this. So good product, good value for money. This is definitely something that I would recommend using, and this guy is definitely going to be my go-to thermal camera for my subsequent videos. Thank you to Thermal Master for sending this review sample in to me. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.